Hi everyone, my name is Alex Warner, and this will be my video presentation for cognitive psychology. If I'm looking away, it's because this is where my mic is. And let's get started. So, what is psilocybin? Psilocybin is a compound found within certain fungi. The colloquial cultural term that people use is magic mushrooms or shrooms. There's definitely a certain connotation to this. And when taken in a certain way, it produces a trip, which is a psychedelic high in which people encounter it's very subjective. They encounter different things, geometric patterns. Sometimes they see um, godlike entities, or they just have strange sensations throughout their body, um, which they would not have otherwise. It can be a very extreme experience. Some people describe it like being shot out of a cannon. But yeah, so despite the cultural connotation of mushrooms as being a sort of negative influence on society, there are some debatable medicinal benefits to this substance with regards to human cognition and how we specifically, what I'll be talking about, how we deal with addiction. So the state of research currently is that it's illegal in most places, and despite it being illegal, sort of caught up in some blanket policies in the war on drugs, there are some very promising uh, some some promising studies that show that it might be good at tackling issues such as nicotine addiction. So the focus here will be on smoking cessation. So the study that I chose is long-term follow-up of psilocybin-facilitated smoking cessation by a couple of different people. The goal of the study is essentially to determine if psilocybin encourages or reinforces smoking abstinence. So tobacco products, people could just lie and say, um, I've been totally good about not smoking. It's been a year I haven't smoked. But to sort of tease out the people who are just going to say that they have not been smoking because of sort of the desire to maintain face socially. These researchers actually measured the tobacco byproducts, which was in their blood and their urine, and they were tested about a month after the initial administration of psilocybin to determine whether or not they had abstained from smoking. So before we get into the results, there are a couple of valid criticisms. Um, Firstly, you can't really produce a control and a variable group. You could, in a lot of medicinal studies, you could give someone a placebo and use that as a sort of control group. But the thing about psilocybin is that it is such a powerful substance, you can't really trick people into thinking that they're on a psychedelic trip. Um, so it makes it very difficult to establish any meaningful cause and relationship. Um, or at least it can. And the final thing is that I think is a valid criticism of this study is that uh, it attempts to quantify these life-altering experiences as quote unquote mystical experiences. That is the only extent to which we can quantify them. They're very subjective. They can't really help but to be subjective because this is just happening in people's mind, and what results is just their reaction to that cognitive experience. But here are the results of the study and what they mean. So, as I said earlier, tobacco byproducts were measured in their blood and their urine, and also their breathing to determine whether or not they had abstained. And the mystical experience that psilocybin produced, the psychedelic experience that people had in their brains, did correlate with significant drops in smoking and in increased abstinence, you could say. 67% of subjects had been totally abstinent from smoking for almost an entire year after that initial administration, and almost 87% actually ranked their psilocybin experience as among the top five most meaningful and spiritual experience in their lives. Um, which, this experience had a great impact on them. While it is totally anecdotal, we can't really see what they saw. In my opinion, looking at the data, it does seem very promising that even with alternatives like nicotine patches, we don't seem to get this same correlation. These pretty awesome numbers for smoking. So the implications for this medicine, or some people don't think it's a medicine, but for this substance, from a neurological standpoint, would be that we could combat smoking and possibly other addictions. There are other things that psilocybin is thought to handle quite well that this presentation will not address, like depression, anxiety. But with smoking specifically, it's a very harmful force on society. We see that mortality rates are 3 times higher for men and women who smoke due to respiratory diseases and other factors induced by smoking. There's also secondhand smoke. People that don't smoke directly, thousands of them die every year. Psilocybin could actually curb these trends if we give it a shot, if we do more studies on it, and we see how it affects human cognition in relation to addiction, figure out what's happening. One exciting development is that Oregon has recently actually legalized it. They have made a 2-year plan to enforce sort of quality control on therapeutic settings, determine who should be qualified to facilitate this. And there's a slew of other addictions and issues that psilocybin could address. Like I mentioned before, you got PTSD, anxiety. So we really should be exploring this topic a bit more, especially seeing how it affects sort of human neurology in the brain. So here's a full citation. This is a topic that I think is very interesting. It seems to have a lot to do with human cognition in ways that maybe we don't fully understand yet, but maybe we will in the near future. So I hope this gave you a useful sort of glimpse into the world of psychedelics and the human brain, and thank you.